Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're digging into a wild story that's been shaking up both the corporate world and the courts here in the US. It's about the killing of UnitedHealthcare's boss, Brian Thompson, and the crazy turn of events where the guy accused of his murder, Luigi Mangione, had terrorism charges dropped. Think about it this way. It's a cold December morning in 2024, and New York City is buzzing with holiday shoppers when, bam, gunshots ring out in the New York Hilton Midtown. Thompson, who was 50 and a big shot in health insurance, is shot dead. The shooter, wearing a mask and super calm, leaves behind bullet casings with this creepy message: deny, defend, depose. Sounds like something out of a mob movie. But those words aren't just random. They're calling out the insurance companies, saying they delay, deny, and fight claims no matter what, usually hurting people who really need help. This wasn't just a simple murder, it was about the feeling that profits matter more than people's health. So we're going to look at why this all happened, how they caught the guy, the weird legal stuff, and what it all says about the anger building up in a country where getting healthcare feels like it is only for the rich. Get ready, because this story makes you think hard about who's the bad guy and who's trying to do what's right. By the end, you may not even know where you stand on all of this. Brian Thompson, the CEO, was a guy who either represented the American dream or a total nightmare, depending on who you asked. He climbed up at UnitedHealth Group since '04 and became the boss in 2021. He was in charge of this huge company that covered over 50 million Americans and made $400 billion a year. But behind all the fancy investor meetings and his huge $28 million salary, things weren't so great. While he was in charge, they turned down about 32% of claims, which is way higher than other companies. This led to tons of lawsuits from people who were denied stuff like cancer treatments or organ transplants. People who worked there said the company used computer programs to automatically reject claims, turning people's health problems into profit. Thompson tried to defend it in interviews, saying the system was complex but needed. But for families who went broke because of medical bills, over $500,000 each year according to the CDC, he was the poster child for greed. On December 4th, he walked into the Hilton for a meeting, not knowing he was walking into a trap. Someone saw him as a symbol of what's wrong with the system. The killing wasn't messy, it was precise. The killer used a silenced 3D printed gun, fired 3 shots, grabbed a bullet casing, and just disappeared into the crowd. This showed a lot of planning, anger, and sent a message that went beyond the crime scene. It fired up discussions about if business leaders should be afraid of being held responsible with violence. Let's talk about Luigi Mangione, the guy accused. He's 27 and a bit of a puzzle. He comes from a rich family in Baltimore, and honestly, you wouldn't think he'd be an assassin. He was the top student at Gilman, went to UPenn for computer science, seemed set for a great job in Silicon Valley, not prison. People who know him say he's smart, thoughtful, and even likable. But some say he was also pretty unhappy. Friends remember him complaining about big companies hurting regular people. Court papers show he had a notebook full of angry stuff, praising the Unabomber and ranting about how insurance companies like UnitedHealthcare get rich from people being sick. There was even a scary plan to attack during the investor meeting. Reportedly, Mangione flew to NYC a few days before, used a fake name to rent a place, built a gun he couldn't be traced to from parts he bought online, and followed Thompson. The bullet casings had a message that seemed to reference things that came out in congressional hearings. So, was he just crazy, or did something push him too far? People are saying he had a bad back and had problems with his insurance. Now everyone's watching security footage of the hooded shooter, who seemed strangely calm. Some think he's a terrorist, others see him as a hero, especially since medical debt is such a big problem in the US these days. The chase after Mangione was like something from a thriller movie. It went across states and showed just how strong surveillance is now since 9/11. After the shooting, Mangione disappeared in New York City, but clues led detectives to his Airbnb where they found fake IDs, the gun, and that awful letter. One note said, "This is for the ruined lives," which made people think he had bigger plans. 5 days later, on December 9th, 2024, he was caught in a surprising spot, a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. A smart worker saw him and remembered the police drawings, the gray sweatshirt, the tired look, and told the cops. Police showed up, and Mangione gave up without a fight. His backpack had even more proof. The arrest was big news everywhere. CNN kept repeating the CEO Slayer story, and Fox News warned about anti-capitalist terror. Social media went wild. Yours Insurance Kills was trending with justice for Thompson. Polls said that even though they were horrified, 40% of Americans felt bad for him because they'd heard stories of people dying because their insurance claims were denied. Catching him wasn't just about one person. It showed that people who know tech can plan serious attacks from their computers. As Mangione was sent back to New York, the case became a test for the American justice system. State and federal lawyers argued, showing problems in how we decide if something is terrorism or just revenge. Okay, so here's the deal with the Mangione case. He's stuck in a crazy legal mess with 2 trials going on at once, which raises some serious constitutional questions. After dealing with the Trump trials, the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, hit Mangione with 11 charges in state court. These charges included first- and second-degree murder as acts of terrorism, meaning he could spend his life in prison. The thing about terrorism in New York is that you have to be trying to scare people or change policy using fear. The prosecutors pointed to his manifesto and the shell casings as proof that he was trying to start a revolution. At the same time, federal prosecutors in the Southern District charged him with stalking across state lines, which could mean the death penalty. This is unusual, but definitely on the table since the killings were planned. Mangione's lawyers are saying this is double jeopardy and that having 2 cases at the same time violates his Fifth Amendment rights. They argue he's having to defend himself twice for the same thing. But the courts aren't buying it, saying that it's okay to have state and federal charges for crimes that cross state lines. Months have gone by, and Mangione's been in solitary confinement after trying to kill himself. The whole thing has turned into a media circus, with his supporters in healthcare reform. Now shirts arguing with the victim's family outside the court. This isn't just about legal stuff. It shows how tough it is for the nation to figure out how to punish actions that are both crimes and statements, especially when the victim represents an industry that people think is killing through red tape. Okay, so September 16th, 2025 was a crazy day in the Manhattan Supreme Court. Judge Gregory Caro, who's known for being direct, basically blew up the prosecution's case in just 15 minutes. He threw out the main terrorism charges against Mangione. Caro said there was enough to charge Mangione with premeditated murder, but no way was it terrorism. He looked at Mangione's writings and decided he wasn't trying to scare people or governments, just calling out insurance greed. According to Caro, the shell casings were a message, not a threat. The goal was exposure, not terror. You should have seen the prosecutors' faces. The courtroom went wild. Activists were celebrating and Thompson's widow was in tears. Now, Mangione isn't totally off the hook. He still has 9 counts against him, including second-degree murder, which could mean 25 years to life with parole as a prospect. But dropping the terrorism charges means he dodged a life sentence without parole, giving him a shot at freedom. Bragg's office says they're still going after him, but people inside say this was a huge setback and wonder if the DA was just trying to get attention. As Mangione was led away, he nodded to his supporters. The ruling has started a lot of arguments. Did the judge make the horror seem smaller? Or did he stop the DA from going too far in our crazy times? The future is uncertain for Mangione, with those federal and state trials coming up. Pre-trial hearings begin December 1st, 2025, and the death penalty is a real possibility since prosecutors are pushing for it because of the interstate stalking and planning. Mangione's lawyers like Karen Friedman Agnafilo are trying to get him a plea deal, life in prison instead of execution. They might use his writings to say his systemic trauma made him less responsible. There's even a fight over where the trial will be. NYC juries could be more understanding, but the feds might move it to a less friendly place. Oddly enough, people are starting to feel sorry for him. Petitions for healthcare reform are getting lots of signatures, making Mangione look like a symbol of change, not just a criminal. What happens if he testifies and tells all the industry secrets, or if he makes a deal to disappear? Either way, this thing could last for years, cost tons of money, and maybe even end up at the Supreme Court, especially if double jeopardy issues come up. For Thompson's family, it's going to be a long and difficult process. For healthcare reformers, it's a cause to support. From a global view, this whole thing shows how divided the US is, which makes things shaky with our allies as they watch our corporate and government drama. This whole thing shows how messed up healthcare is here in the US. It's a $4.5 trillion system where money seems more important than actually keeping people alive. What UnitedHealthcare did isn't a one-time thing. It looks like it's how they do business, Reports say around 25 million people skip going to the doctor each year because it costs too much. Thompson's company had over 1,000 lawsuits last year for wrongly turning people down. It even reminds some people of those death panel arguments from a few years ago. Mangione's supposed plan plays into this anger because he said something like, "Let one person die to save many." It's a messed up way of thinking that comes from real problems, like veterans not getting help for PTSD or kids having to cut back on their insulin. The gap between the rich and poor keeps getting wider. The richest 1% have almost a third of all the money. Many people are getting really angry, kind of like those radical groups from the past or the Occupy Wall Street protests more recently. When you look at other countries, like the universal healthcare systems in Europe or China's government-run system, it makes the US look bad. Our problems are making us look less like a superpower. After the shooting, stocks went down a bit, and there was more talks about making changes. Biden's team is pushing to make healthcare costs more open now. But is violence the solution? No way. That could make things worse and weaken our democracy. But if we ignore why people are so mad in the first place, things could explode. We need to do things like limit how much CEOs get paid or think about something like Medicare for all, which polls say most Americans actually want. The Mangione case has blown up into a huge cultural thing, splitting the country even more than it already was with politics and the pandemic. Social media is going wild with the Mangione manifesto, with millions of posts. People are throwing money at his defense. They've raised $500,000 to help him, sharing their bad times with insurance companies. But others are calling him a spoiled murderer who's hiding behind some kind of excuse. There are protests going on everywhere. 5,000 people rallied in NYC shouting "Deny no more," but then there were candlelight vigils for Thompson, remembering him as a family man and innovator. Even celebrities are speaking out. Elon Musk tweeted that the system needs fixes to avoid killings, and AOC wants Congress to investigate. The news is all over the place. MSNBC is digging into the bad stuff in the industry, while Fox News is complaining about woke excuses. The BBC is calling it American unrest and wondering if these business killings mean things are really falling apart. Thompson's widow is suing because she thinks they're making Mangione look too good, while Mangione's family is publicly saying they don't support him, but secretly helping him out. This whole mess isn't going away anytime soon. It's asking if people are starting to think they can take the law into their own hands because nobody knows what's real anymore, and killers are being made to look cool in fake videos. Basically, it's asking if we can feel bad about the system that might have made someone do something terrible, while still saying murder is wrong. So, as this crazy story ends, keep in mind that Luigi Mangione's case isn't just a crime story. It shows us a dark side of America, like how greed hurts us and how justice can only do so much. From the hotel shootout to the judge calling him a terrorist, it makes us face some hard facts. When our systems break down, people get extreme. As the trials continue, pay attention and fix healthcare so that nothing awful will happen. Fix healthcare so that we don't see more blood, or we might just keep getting revenge. This story changes all the time, mixing world politics with real danger, which reminds us that in a world where people don't have equal power, one thing can lead to everyone talking about it. What side of the story do you think is right, the system or the person who started everything? Tell us what you think below, subscribe to get more news without anything held back, and hit the notification bell. And we'll let you know what happens on this story and every twist in the world's crazy news. Until next time, don't believe everything you hear, and let's try to make the world